Privileges and election will come to order. My apologies for my lateness. It seems that we're all somewhere doing something for the benefit of the Commonwealth, and it now appears that we have an appropriate quorum, so we'll begin. Let's start with our committee reports. And we'll go first with the election subcommittee, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we need to start first by incorporating 3 bills into House Bill 1. And so that was the recommendation of the subcommittee. And so that would be House Bill 25, House Bill 208, and House Bill 209. So the recommendation would be to incorporate 25, 208, and 209 into House Bill 1, and I so move.
Are you sure that that was your motion? I thought we were incorporating HB 1, HB 208, and HB 209 into HB 25. I'm just kidding, okay? All right, there has been a motion. I'm sorry, folks. I just haven't had my coffee this morning. There's been a motion to incorporate into HB 1, HB 25, to which I have no objection, HB 208 and HB 209. And that's a subcommittee motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay. All right, that motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think the next proper thing to do would be would take up House Bill 1, and I think we would need to. We recommended reporting with the substitute, so I think the first thing to do would be to move the substitute. I'd so move.
All right. All right. There's a motion to move that substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed signify by saying nay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Am I correct? This would be to report, and therefore would be a recorded vote?
That's adopting the substitute.
I thought we'd done that. My apologies. Okay.
No, we did the enrollment. So, okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1, and the patron delegate hearing is here, is absentee voting, no excuse required. It permits any registered voter to vote by absentee ballot in any election in which he or she is qualified to vote. The bill removes the current list of statutory reasons under which a person may be entitled to vote by absentee ballot and removes references to those reasons from other sections of the code. The subcommittee recommended reporting with the substitute 4-2, and I would so move at the appropriate time.
Delegate, I would say that now is the appropriate time.
I so move.
Okay. All right. Subcommittee has made the recommendation of reporting HB 1. All those in favor say aye. No, I'm sorry. Open the roll, please. And I knew that when I was walking down to get my briefcase. Okay. That measure reports 10-7. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Next on the docket is my bill, House Bill 207, absentee voting, no excuse, permanent absentee voter list. I think we would need to move the amendments first, so I would move the amendments.
All right. All right, that motion and a second. All right. All those in favor of accepting the amendments to HB 207, say aye. Aye. All right. All opposed, say nay. Okay, the bill is in the appropriate posture.
House Bill 207 permits any registered voter to vote by absentee ballot in any election in which he or she is qualified to vote. It follows in line with House Bill 1 and provides application by which any registered voter may apply to receive absentee ballots for all elections in which they're eligible to vote. You could essentially become a permanent absentee ballot voter and to permanently get your ballot in the mail. The amendments, there was 2 things in the amendments. The first was at line 354, we inserted after I-4 or 4, the voter moves to a different address not in the same county or city of his registration. And the second amendment was to delay the enactment for a year. And so I would move that we report this with the amendments.
Is there any question or any unreadiness on part of any of the members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just speaking to the motion and the bill before us.
All right. Floor recognizes Delegate Auroch.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the concept. I guess my concern, and I spoke with some proponents who came by my office on the matter, gets to, and the amendment addresses it in part. But first of all, as we're going now into no excuse absentee voting, which I completely embrace, I think it's a little premature to presume that that now can be something we do permanently, that I think we need slow down, take our time, and know we've got a delayed effective. But then to me, that begs the issue that we don't really need this bill at this juncture, but rather that we potentially would just try and get feedback from Board of Elections, how well this is working, are we seeing any issues? Because from a practical matter, and I will just share a circumstance that involved one of my constituents this fall, where she received a notification from Registrar Prince William County that this was her new voting place. And she didn't live in Prince William. She owned a rental property in Prince William. And so what had transpired was somebody had gone and fraudulently used her name and that address and presented to the registrar, purporting to be her. The only way she could preserve her voting right in Spotsylvania was she had to present to the registrar in Spotsylvania with photo ID to prove that she was not living in Prince William. I think that doing this on a permanent basis creates a circumstance whereby, given that I'm an absentee ballot voter, do I ever really have, for lack of a better term, a voting place? Does the precinct matter? And I just think we're moving a little too hastily on this. I'm not necessarily totally opposed to the concept, but I think our focus needs to be on ensuring the integrity of the voting process to stipulate, and we also know it takes a while sometimes for death records to catch up through Bureau of Vital Statistics with Board of Elections. I think we're opening ourselves up here to a circumstance where an individual's living conditions, they may be in a nursing home, but they're still going to be getting an absentee ballot mailed to their home address that somebody can get and fill out. And while that's fraud, I don't know any way you catch it. And that's my concern. So all due respect to the patron, I understand none of these issues are his intent. He's just trying to make it easier for folks to vote absentee and not have to go through reapplying every year. I get it. But I think that the law of unintended consequences here may trump, and that we're just a little premature in going forward. I just want to make those comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Any other member of the body would like to have some questions? All right. I don't see anyone on my request. Well, I now see someone on my request to speak. All right. And I just ask you to use your request to speak buttons, and the floor recognizes Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Mr.
The chair
Chairman.
recognizes Delegate Cole. Sorry.
I see where, I guess they would have to re-register if they move to a different address in the same county or city. However, would they need to re-register if they move to a different precinct or district within the same county or city, because that could affect what's on the ballot that they are mailed voting absentee?
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Cole, it'd be my understanding that the records would be updated within that locality's registration process. And so it's unnecessary unless you're moving outside of the county, because the records would just be within the county, and when they had to re-register at their new address, that would take care of itself. And council can maybe speak to that as well, but that's my understanding of why it's only necessary for when you're leaving a county or city and not when you're within a county or city.
Meg, you got any information?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Cole, I would agree with that statement. The general registrar for the same county or city would be able to update the registration record and send the correct ballot.
All right, is there any question or about this from any member of the audience? Anyone wanting to speak for the measure? Please approach the podium.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Scoble on behalf of Unite Virginia, speaking in support of this bill. We believe it will increase voter turnout, also reduce workload of the registrar's office of an estimated 8,000 hours that are spent on repeat processing applications. Also, the National Association of Letter Carriers supports this bill as well as the Vote at Home Institute. Thank you.
All right. Anyone wanting to speak against the measure? All right, the committee acts on motion.
It's already been moved.
Has it been? Yeah. Sorry.
And you don't need a second on committee
No.
report.
So you all have gotten the ranking member of the committee upset. You know, if it's a committee report from a subcommittee, it does not need to be seconded. Okay.
I learned that from Delegate Warrock.
All right. Oh, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. All right. This measure passes 9-8. Close the roll.
Mr. Chairman, next up is House Bill 220, Delegate Krizak's bill that requires the envelope provided to an absentee voter for the return of an absentee ballot to include prepaid postage. The subcommittee recommended reporting and referring to appropriations 6-0, and I so move.
Any questions from any member of the committee? All right.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I believe that was report and refer to appropriations was a motion. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, he said that. Okay. All right. Anyone in the audience who did not speak at subcommittee who wants to speak in support of this measure? Anyone in the audience who did not speak at subcommittee who wants to speak against this measure?
Good morning, I'm Barbara Tabb with the Electoral Board Association. Again, I'm not really speaking against it, but we did go back and do some research after the subcommittee on the cost. When we talked with Fairfax County alone, the advice we got from them was that because these return postages were in a different postage category, it was treated at a different rate, a higher rate. When the registrar responded to our inquiry, their response was they could see this upwards of $60,000 in postage for Fairfax County alone. Our request again is to make sure that we don't impose this on localities and that we understand that if we're going to do this, we have to have funding from the state, not just to expect localities.
And I appreciate your comments. I think that's the reason for the motion to report and refer to appropriations. Okay. All right. Anyone else wanting to speak on this measure? All right. Please open the roll, Madam Clerk. Close roll. This measure reports 12-5.
Next, Mr. Chairman, we have House Bill 238, the first of three very fine bills from our ranking member, Delegate Sickles. This one is about absentee voting and provides that any absentee ballot that is returned to the general registrar after the closing of the polls on Election Day, but before noon on the third day after the election and postmarked on or before the date of the election shall be counted if the voter is found entitled to vote. This bill did contain some amendments, so we should... No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Yeah. And the subcommittee recommended reporting at 6-0, and I so move.
Any questions from any member of the committee? Anyone in the audience who did not participate at subcommittee who would like to support this measure? Anyone in the audience who did not participate at subcommittee who would like to say something against this measure? Very good. Open the rolls, Madam Clerk. Close the rolls. This measure reports 17-0.
Next, Mr. Chairman, we have House Bill 239. This bill extends the deadline for a voter to apply for an absentee ballot that is to be cast by mail from the 7th day prior to the election to the 11th day prior to the election. The bill also adjusts the deadline for applications for multiple elections for uniformed and overseas voters and for emergency applications and absentee ballots for persons who are incapacitated or hospitalized. The subcommittee recommended reporting 6-0, and I so move.
Any questions from any member of the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who did not have an opportunity to speak and would like, at subcommittee, who would like to speak to this measure? Anyone in the audience who did not have an opportunity to speak at subcommittee who would like to speak against this measure? All right, Madam Clerk, please open the rolls. Madam Clerk, close the rolls. All right, this matter reports 17-0.
And Mr. Chairman, last on our docket is House Bill 240, which provides that any person who is eligible for an absentee ballot pursuant to law and who is likely to remain so eligible for the remainder of the calendar year shall be eligible to file a special annual application to receive ballots for all elections in which he or she is eligible to vote in that calendar year. The subcommittee recommended reporting 6-0, and I so move.
Any member of the committee who'd like to speak to this issue?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Yeah.
All right, you're going to make it easier for me, even though
I apologize. I didn't hit my button there first. My bad. I'm sorry.
All right, Chair recognizes Delegate Auroch.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my question, given the action we took on Delegate Van Valkenburg's bill, that his was broader in scope, are these two bills then in conflict?
Mr. Chairman, the answer to that is no, because this bill would go into effect immediately, and my bill with a delayed enactment wouldn't go into effect for a year. So practically speaking, this bill would be in effect for 6 months to a year.
Mr. Chairman, follow-up question.
Delegate Auroch.
Would then we need to put a sunset provision on this matter? Or we would just leave it as is in anticipation we might repeal it at such time as Delegate Van Valkenburg's goes into law?
Counsel.
That's what Delegate Sickles said. That's the deal. Okay.
Counsel.
Right. Delegate Auroch, Mr. Chair, they're the same code section, so when Delegate Van Valkenburg's bill took effect next year, it would essentially override the changes made in this bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Sickles.
This is the beginning of the legislative process. We can't predict what might happen to either of these two bills as we go forward, and the governor talks them. So I think there's room for both bills.
All right. Madam Clerk, open the roll. The members will cast their votes. Close the roll. Measure reports 17-0.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the report for the Elections Subcommittee.
All right. Is Delegate Converse Fowler, if you could give a report from the Gubernatorial Appointments Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with HB 57. HB 57 changes the date of the primary election held in June from the second Tuesday in June to the third Tuesday in June. The bill also changes candidate filing deadlines to reflect the change of date. The subcommittee recommended reporting this bill on a vote of 5-1, and I so move.
Any member like to speak to this measure? Okay. All right. Is there Any person out in the audience who did not have an opportunity to participate at subcommittee who would like to speak in favor of this measure?
Good morning. I'd just like to say that the Registrars Association supports
Can you please
this.
tell us who you are,
Oh,
ma'am?
I'm sorry. Constance Hargrove, General Registrar of Chesterfield County.
Okay,
And the Registrars Association does support this bill.
very good. Anyone else who would like to speak to this bill? Okay. All right. Any person in the audience who would like to speak against this measure? Okay. Madam Clerk, open the roll.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your request to speak. Yes,
Well,
Delegate Adams.
I was hoping to ask a question of the patron, if that was
Okay.
allowed.
All right. Madam Clerk, please close the roll. Please destroy the roll. I thought you only had destroyed, there was actually votes taken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate Fowler. I was just hoping someone could speak to the rationale behind this. We've heard, everyone's in support, but why?
Mr. Chairman.
For everyone but one, it looks like.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I think the prime mover, the prime reason for this bill is, again, most of our voting precincts are located in our public schools across the Commonwealth. And not all of them, but I'd say probably the majority of our public schools are still open and their school year runs through the second Tuesday in June. So by moving it to the third Tuesday in June, we eliminate that conflict between our, public schools and the electoral process where, again, you have, the folks going into schools will typically have IDs that, that let them into the schools, but obviously voters aren't required to have those kinds of things. So it was kind of a school security issue as well. So that was, I think, the prime reason for this legislation, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's the Nick Freitas bill to give him another week to get his paperwork.
Okay. I'd like the record to note that comment came from left of me and not right. Okay. All right. Madam Clerk, if you'd open the rolls. All in favor, vote accordingly. All opposed, do likewise.
You gotta push your green button. I know you're new.
Madam Clerk, close the roll. The measure reports 18-2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Converse Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 146 removes a restriction on unofficial sample ballots being printed on yellow paper. With this bill, unofficial sample ballots are prohibited from being printed on white paper. The bill contains technical amendments for clarity and readability. This bill, the subcommittee reported this bill as a vote of 6-0, and I so move.
All right. Any member of this committee have any questions? All right. Delegate Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Understand that official ballots are normally on white paper, and this still prohibits an unofficial ballot or sample ballot from being printed on white paper. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Madam Clerk? No. Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Members will cast your ballots. Madam Clerk, please close the roll. This measure reports 21-0. Delegate Converse Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 186 removes the prohibition against an election day page program being conducted in a central absentee voter precinct. The subcommittee recommended reporting this bill on a vote of 6-0, and I so move.
All right, I'm not noting any questions being desired to be asked by any committee member. Is there anyone out in the audience who has not had an opportunity to speak on this bill and would like to speak at this time? Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Members will cast their ballots. Madam Clerk, please close the roll. This measure reports 20-1. Delegate Congress Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 237 provides for terms of local electoral board members to begin on January 1st. Currently, the terms begin on March 1st. The subcommittee recommended reporting this bill on a vote of 6-0, and I so move.
Delegate Levine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question about this bill for the patron. One of my concerns is that we have a lot of election turnover around January 1st. Sometimes someone runs for Congress, and someone runs for Senate, someone runs for delegates. What if there is an election where there is a recount or some kind of contest and it continues over into the new year? Would that pose a problem under this bill? I'd like to ask the patron or whomever wants to answer.
This bill was a suggestion of the Electoral Boards Association, and the main concern, which I think is it could be an annual concern, is that if you wait longer to appoint people, they will have an election in the first week or two of being the registrar, and they needed more time to make sure they're totally trained, up to speed, can do the job, and they wanted more time, so that's why we did it. If the Electoral Board Association would like to talk to this case where we might have an election or council that goes, the outcome has not been determined by December, how would you handle that?
In the past, we've even had some that have to be recounted. What we would do is the existing member would be from the same political party as the new member. The way that the appointments would be done, we could either have the handover to that new person. What we in reality would do was request that the existing board member continue on in a capacity through the life of that election, whatever it is, whether it be a recount or whatever, before we actually have the appointment effective, so that there is continuity through that recount. Now, that is not in the code, but that would be what our practice would be.
Good answer.
Any follow-up questions?
Mr. Chairman, speaking to the measure, because of that concern of mine, it doesn't matter to me where there's not an election that's held over, but in the case of an election that's held over where a recount begins in December and continues into January, and we have seen this frequently in Virginia, without that amendment, I'm going to vote no on the measure. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from any member of the committee? Delegate Rush.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, would the patron and the Electoral Board Association agree to that amendment, just where it's through the continuation of the last election? I believe Delegate Levine has a good point.
I would be happy to entertain that amendment for these unusual cases that are being handled well now, informally. But yes, we can put that in the code.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you could have a recount go, and then it would politicize who that person was coming on to the board to try to get appointed.
Okay. Well,
and that would be the problem with that. And then it also could allow a constitution of that election if it's not clear in the code whether that person is legally serving or not.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Delegate Rush, would he be more comfortable going by for the day and doing that at the next committee meeting, or having a floor amendment and let this thing keep going at this point? We can do either one.
Mr. Chairman, I'm getting used to my new role in minority, but yes, I'd be much more comfortable with it going by for the day and coming back.
Well, I'll make a motion
to go by for the day.
We won't have the council drafted up now because we're being nice to our councils now with all the heavy workload they have. So she'll have several days to get that line amendment ready.
Those are
So-
comments by Delegate Sickles and should be attributed to Delegate Sickles alone. Okay? Okay. All right. So we know that we have very able staff, and we're confident in their competence and their ability to do the job as dispatched.
So I second the motion to go by for the day.
Okay. No, that's not where I am. And Delegate Rush, I realize that being a minority is new to you. If you talk to me offline, I'll tell you something about it.
Mr. Chairman, maybe by skin tone, but my accent does. I am the minority with the accent caucus in this body.
All right. I believe that there's been a motion and a second for this to go by for the day. All right. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right. This matter will go by for the day. Delegate Converse Fowler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 1402, there is an amendment, so I believe we need to adopt the amendment, and I so move.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Orrock.
Could we hold on adopting the amendments until staff has had the opportunity to distribute them for those who weren't in the subcommittee necessarily?
We didn't vote on it.
No, but I'm just, we did on the one before, so I was just on this time.
Can council report the amendment?
Mr. Chair, on line 17, after the word "shall," we'll insert "verify with the voter his full name and address," and "shall," and then the rest of the bill continues.
Okay. Any questions by any members of the committee? Delegate Price?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can the attorney repeat the placement? I just want to make sure I'm seeing the right place for it to be in there.
Sure. On line 17, after the word "shall," we'll insert "verify with the voter his full name and address," and "shall," and then the rest of the code will pick up, and then so it'll read, "and shall repeat in a voice audible to party and candidate representatives present the full name provided by the voter."
All right, any questions by any member of the committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Simon.
A question, I think, for council. So I think what the effect of this is that they sort of, you walk in and the poll book worker at the desk and the voter, they can either show them their address and they can compare something, on their driver's license or whatever they bring in to the poll book, or they can whisper it to each other. But then the part that's said aloud by that poll book worker excludes the address. Is that what this is designed to do? So they're still verifying the address, but they're just not repeating that out loud for everybody in the room to hear?
Mr. Chair, Delegate Simon, that's correct. The concern in the subcommittee was there wouldn't be the opportunity for an officer of election to make sure that they had Robert Orrock versus Robert Orrock Jr., if they can also confirm the address.
Thank you.
And council, can you just apprise the rest of the members of the committee the circumstance that was sought to be addressed by this bill?
Mr. Chairman, are you asking the reasoning behind the bill?
Yes.
I believe there were concerns about stalking and domestic violence. Advocates are nodding their head yes that I'm remembering correctly.
All right. And just exercising chairman's prerogative, I happened to have been at that subcommittee meeting, Delegate Adams and Delegate Orrock, and I recall it, and actually Delegate Orrock, you were there at the subcommittee meeting, and I recall the concern was that sometimes in calling out the name and address aloud, that sometimes the persons with nefarious intent are able to get that information and act in a fashion contrary to our laws. So that was the reason for this measure, as I recall. Are there any questions from any other member of the committee?
Move the amendments.
All right. All right, the motion's been made to move the amendment.
Second.
This is a subcommittee report. And right before you came here,
But the amendments still need to be seconded, right?
amendment needs to
be seconded.
Right? Mr. Stippel, I don't know.
No.
No.
I think amendment needs to be
the
seconded.
amendment had been moved.
I thought we had
all
waited,
right.
the request of Delegate Auroch, I thought we had waited to move the amendments because he wanted to be able to see it first. Oh, my
yeah.
bad. Gotcha.
But still, the second is proper, right? Excuse me.
All right. This is a teaching moment. The floor recognizes Delegate Auroch. In this instance, would there need to be a second to the
And any recommendation from a subcommittee, whether it be for the adoption of amendments or the overall adoption of the bill, because it comes from a subcommittee, it comes to the full committee knowing more than 2 members are in support of the matter, so therefore it does not require a second from anyone on the committee for action to be taken on the motion.
Yeah, I knew that. No, I was telling everybody earlier, but was this amendment, Mr. Chairman? This amendment was approved in subcommittee? Okay. No second is needed.
All right, now that we've clarified, now that all minds are clear, all right, Madam Clerk, please open the roll.
The amendment wasn't adopted, was it?
It was adopted in subcommittee.
All
That's what
right,
he just said.
all right. All right, stop, we got it, all right. All in favor of the amendment as mentioned, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, signify by saying nay. All right. Now that the bill is in the proper posture, Madam Clerk, would you open the roll? All right. This measure is reported by a vote of 21 to 1. Delegate Converse Fowler.
Mr. Chair, this concludes the gubernatorial appointment subcommittee report.
Okay. All right. We'll now hear from the Campaign Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First on the docket is House Bill 71. It is related to campaign finance, audits of campaign finance reports, certain campaign committees. The subcommittee recommended under Rule 22 to continue until 2021, and I so move.
Any unreadiness or question by any member of the committee? Anyone in the audience wanting to speak for or against that motion? Madam Clerk, please open the roll. Members will cast their ballots. Oh, well then members don't have to cast their ballot. Yeah. And you know what? In purple highlight, I have continue over, voice vote. So all persons in favor of carrying it over signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. All right? The ayes have it. Not today. Okay. Delegate Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next is House Bill 848, but I believe that we have 3 bills that the subcommittee is recommending that they be incorporated into 848. So I think the proper procedure is to do those incorporations first. So House Bill 1218 is recommended by the subcommittee for incorporation into 848. Also, House Bill 1299 is recommended by the subcommittee to be incorporated into House Bill 848. And also House Bill 1574 is recommended for incorporation. So I move that those be incorporated into House Bill 848.
Any unreadiness or question by any member of the committee? Okay. All right. All those in favor of incorporating it signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. All right, that measure carries. All right, or at least that motion carries. All right. Now, Delegate Reed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, House Bill 848, Campaign Finance Disclosure Act, unlawful conversion of political contributions for personal use and penalty. The subcommittee recommended under Rule 22 for continuing until 2021, and I so move.
Any questions relative to that motion? But all right, is there a substitute that you want to move? I'm being advised by the clerk that this is a substitute by virtue of the incorporation. And so this would still be a voice vote, am I not correct? Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, what?
Delegate Simon.
So I'm confused. I thought that our practice in incorporating was to incorporate the bills, but not necessarily bring any language from any of the other bills into the bill that they were being incorporated into. The incorporation was just sort of a record-keeping decision, in that we would the language of the bills, the bill that's the accepting the incorporated stuff would stay the same and continue to be the vehicle going forward. So did Council understand something different about that?
Council?
My understanding with incorporation was that results in a substitute because you're adding the patrons. But then also in the subcommittee, the first time we heard 848, there was additional language added. The child care expense issue.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Orrock.
Mr. Chairman, and to Delegate Simon's point, our practice, when we were in the opposite posture for a number of years, we stopped doing the incorporations to the very point that Delegate Simon brings up, that when you incorporate, it does bring into question, have all of those provisions been incorporated in the new matter that's going to be carried over?
Yeah.
And so what we started doing was, one, either a substitute that embodied those measures into one, and we would just then act on adoption of the substitute, which had the effect of incorporating all those matters. Or we would let the one vehicle go forward, have the other matters lay on the table, and ask that these other patrons be added as co-patrons. Because to the point, technically, whenever we adopt this substitute, if it doesn't fully incorporate the matters of the three previous bills, there's a question, do we truly incorporate them or not? So that's a matter we can have offline, but I think where we are today, we need to just adopt the substitute, and we can have a conversation offline as to how we proceed.
All right, the substitute is before us. All in favor of the substitute signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. Okay. I was waiting for, I was told to wait until you all actually had the paperwork, and when I said, okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right, the motion on the floor is to carry this matter over to 2021. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed signify by saying nay.
No.
All right, the matter carries over by a vote of everyone but Delegate Price. Okay, Delegate Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1116 relates to political parties, notification of adoption of primary elections, certification of candidates, directs the state political party chairman or their designees to notify the Department of Elections of the party's adoption of a primary election for any office. The bill also directs the state political party chair or their designees to certify to the Department of Elections the names of any candidates who have been nominated by the party through the nomination method other than a primary. The subcommittee recommended reporting 6-0, and I so move.
Any questions or unreadiness on the part, Delegate Orrock?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could someone explain to me how this is going to work differently? That right now, my district is in 2 different counties. Each of those counties' committees come up with an individual representing them. Those 2 individuals get together and determine who's the chairman. And that is to whom I need to submit my petitions to. So does this change now mean I've got to turn them in to RPV?
Thank you.
Or whomever RPV designates among each of the 100 districts? Just, if someone, my uneasiness is not knowing how this practically works going forward.
My understanding, Delegate Orrock, is that this is an administration bill and that there's someone here from the administration to speak on the issue. Let's see if we can't alleviate our unreadiness.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jessica Bowman, Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Elections. So how it currently works is you have a legislative district chair, you turn your petitions into them, they qualify you, and they turn in a piece of paper to us saying, Blow Joe is our nominee. So this would have the legislative district chair report that to RPV, and then RPV give us one big sheet of everyone, so we're not chasing down 240 legislative district chairs around the state.
All right. Any other questions or unreadiness of any member of the committee?
Yeah.
All right. Delegate Rush.
To the State
Followed
Board.
by Delegate Head.
State Board of Elections. And Department of Elections, thank you. So the nominating process by the parties doesn't change. The only thing that changes with this bill is the notification of your department.
That would be correct.
And so instead of multiple folks notifying you, it would just be the 2 party heads or
Or their designee, yes,
or an independent party or someone else.
that would be correct.
Thank you.
Delegate Head.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, question for the department is, what happens? Because I on first blush, I voted for this in subcommittee, and it seemed like a really reasonably good idea, and it still sounds on face value like it does. But then in digging down, looking at it, what happens if the state party chair doesn't designate somebody, or doesn't get around to filing it in a timely fashion?
Then no candidates would appear on the ballot.
All 140 of us are in trouble.
Every single person, and this in essence.
So we would take care of that, Delegate Head.
This in essence puts an enormous, granted responsibility, but divine caveat, honestly, on just the state party chair. And all of us, regardless of party, have from time to time had situations where our state party chair might or might not have been operating in the best interests of everybody in the party, and that gives me a little pause. So I'm changing my vote, just so everybody knows.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Sickles.
I would like to ask Ms. Bowser, isn't it true that if this law had been in effect last year, a certain delegate from Culpeper would have saved about $500,000?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I would say no, because that in that circumstance, it was more than this problem. You may not have heard about a certain gentleman that represents the 1st District, or a certain gentleman that now represents Suffolk and Hampton Roads.
Mr. Chairman, and to clarify, the reason why is there's 2 things you have to do.
Correct.
And he did not do either one of them.
Correct.
So this only takes half of the problem.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And if I'm correct by the answer you just gave, this is a bipartisan problem because you mentioned someone in each of the two majority parties.
It would appear so, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any questions from any other member of the committee? All right. All right. Is there anyone who has not previously spoken to this measure that would like to speak either for or against? All right. Madam Clerk, open the rolls. (11-8). 13-8. Okay, now that I know that the result is safe. Okay. 13-9. Okay. All right. All right. Close the roll.
That's transparency for you.
I was hoping to bring you over, Bobby. Okay. All right. Delegate Reed.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Campaign Finance Subcommittee report from yesterday.
All right, Delegate Reed, I believe you have the bills related to reconsideration.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 88, having voted on the prevailing side, I'd like to make a motion that we reconsider the vote for House Bill 88.
You want us to reconsider the vote by which we laid that bill on the table?
By which we continued it, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Was it a continuation?
Yes, it was.
Okay, sorry. All right, thank you. All right. All right, and is there any question or unreadiness by any member of the committee? All right, all in favor? Well, okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed signify by saying nay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, now that House Bill 88 is before us again, this is a bill from Delegate Carter, Elections, Campaign Finance, Filing Schedule for Persons with Multiple Campaign Committees. It requires any person...
Can the committee be at ease for one moment? What I'd like is if you do the motions on all three bills first, because then we can handle them together.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
House Bill 88 was different than the other remaining three because this was a motion to continue. The other three were motions to lay on the table.
Okay.
So that would be a separate motion to remove from the table for the other three.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So House Bill 88, Elections, Campaign Finance, Filing Schedule for Persons with Multiple Campaign Committees, requires any person who is named as the candidate on the statement of the organization for more than one campaign committee to file reports for all such committees on the same schedule as any committee. The subcommittee originally recommended reporting by a vote of 3-2, and I so move.
Any questions by any member of the committee? All right. Madam Clerk, open the roll. Where's Delegate? Okay. I'm so glad I have control over that. Madam Clerk, close the roll. All right, that measure reports. All right, Delegate Reed.
Mr. Chairman, the three remaining bills, House Bill 849, House Bill 1062, and House Bill 1238, last week there was a motion to lay those on the table. I'd now like to make a motion to remove those from the table.
Okay. All right, any questions by any member of the committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Delegate Rush. All right, and it would really help me. I recognize some voices, yours I do recognize, but it helps me if you press the request to speak, buddy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, sorry. Could you explain why we're removing these from the table? Last week, we laid them on the table because the Department of Elections wanted to study this issue over the summer. There's been no discussion that I've heard that we would remove these from the table.
I'll address that, seeing how I was at the center of that little tempest in a teapot. It appears that the Department of Elections, through various individuals, made inquiry about what we were doing and whether or not it was piecemeal versus a holistic approach, and that they perhaps might be better served by looking globally at the whole situation. I made the decision as chair that was something that we should give great deference to. I've now come to know that as chair, I shouldn't have made that decision. And you can read between the lines however you may. So I think the motion is in order. No, I wasn't, I wasn't offended. Okay. All right. There's been the motion that's been made to remove from the table, and I'm sorry, HB 1238, HB 1062, and HB 849. Any question by any member of the committee? Any further questions by any member of the committee? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. To remove it from the table? Yes, it is. It's in yellow. It is a recorded vote. All right. Not yet. All right. I understand. Sometimes I can't hear worth anything, and sometimes I can hear quite well. So I have this little thing that's called committee motions and procedures, and in it says to lay it on the table is a recorded vote. To remove it from the table is a recorded vote. To pass by is a recorded vote. So we laid it on the table. This motion, as I appreciate it, is to remove it from the table, which would be a recorded vote. All right, please close the roll. All right, this matter carried. All right, I didn't see the number. 19-3. All right, are there any other reports? All right, Delegate Reed.
Mr. Chairman, we now actually have to consider each one of the three bills now that they're off the table.
And let's consider them in block, and we're prepared to, if you make that motion.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can. So now that House Bill 849, 1062, and 1238 are back before us, the subcommittee recommended reporting for House Bill 849, and the 1062 was also recommended for reporting, and 1238 was also recommended for reporting, and I so move.
All right, there's been the motion from the subcommittee to report the measures that have been made reference to, 849, 1062, 1238.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Van Valkenburg.
Can we remove 1238 from the block?
Second.
All right. There's a motion and a second to remove 1238 from the block. A request to remove 1238 from the block. We thought this was going to be simpler.
Mr. Chairman, could the subcommittee chairman please explain the bills? Because last week we just moved to table them and they weren't explained. So I believe that subcommittee chair should do a full report on all three bills. And if it would be appropriate, I'd like to make a motion to vote on all three separately.
All right, and as the chair recalls it, there was explanation on all three bills at the last meeting. As a matter of fact, there were even patrons here. If you recall, Delegate Carter was here, inquiry went back and forth, and then the motions. But for those who may not have that same ready recall, Delegate Reed, if you would, let's deal with them one at a time, Madam Clerk, and I apologize that we're flying by the seat of our pants, so to speak. If we start with Bill 849.
This is already law. Regulation. The same enforcement. When Republicans are the ones that say regulations aren't law, not Democrats. They're the ones who talk about the out of control government, the spending and spewing out regulations that you shouldn't have to force a law.
All right. Delegate Reed, if you could explain the subcommittee report relative to Bill HB 849.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 849 deals with political campaign advertisements, disclosure requirements, advertisements placed or promoted for a fee on an online platform. Subjects any message that is placed or promoted for a fee on an online platform to the same disclosure requirements to which print media, television, radio advertisements are subject. The bill defines online platform as any public-facing website, web application, or digital application, including a social network, ad network, or search engine that sells advertisements. The subcommittee recommended reporting 5-0, and I so move.
Okay. All right. Any unreadiness by any of the members? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak either for or against HB 849? Madam Clerk, if you'd open the roll. Members will cast their votes on the electronic ballot board. Measure reports 22-0. Delegate Reed.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1062, Elections, Political Campaign Advertisements, Definitions of Campaign Telephone Calls and Telephone Call Text Message, adds text message to the definition of campaign telephone calls. The bill also defines telephone call as any single telephone call or text message, electronic or otherwise, that when combined with other telephone calls constitutes campaign telephone calls. The subcommittee recommended for reporting 6-0, and I so move.
Any questions on the part of any one of the members of this committee? Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak either for or against HB 1062? Madam Clerk, please open the roll. The members will cast their ballots. The measure reports 22-0. Delegate Reed.
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1238 changes the requirement that print media disclosures
Delegate Reed, excuse me 1 second. The committee will be at ease. All right.
House Bill 12.
No, when I said all right, I didn't mean for you to. All right. My understanding is that there may be some questions or unreadiness as it relates to Delegate Wilt's bill. I also understand that he would have every confidence in believing that the bill would report, given that it came out of Subcommittee 6-0. So as not to have a situation where a patron of a bill doesn't have an opportunity to defend their bill, is there some motion as a Delegate Cole?
I move to pass by for the day.
Second.
All right. The motion has been made to pass by for the day. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed signify by saying nay. Okay. All right. And I realize that doesn't invite that doesn't invite input from those who are assembled, but I'm thinking that you would rather give your input when the patron is actually giving the rationale for his bill, as opposed to giving it now and then having us forget it in a week. Okay. All right. Is there any additional business on the part of the committee? Chair will entertain a motion for adjournment. All right. Committee's adjourned.
Hey, you guys.